Okay, so thank you very much for your kind introduction. And today I will present some findings of my new research project on the Holocaust and the sexual violence during the Holocaust in Ukraine. So in the last 2 decades, there has been growing scholarly interest in the relationship between sexuality and violence in Nazi-occupied territories, including Ukraine. However, many studies focus on the analysis of sexual crimes by occupying forces, in particular the members of Einsatzgruppen, Oder Police, Wehrmacht, and Allied soldiers. However, we know little about the role of locals in the sexual victimization of Jewish women. The group of local perpetrators includes collaborators, members of different partisan groups, I mean Ukraine nationalists, underground Polish, Soviet, and even Jewish partisan groups, ordinary men and women, aid givers, and even fellow Jews, for example, in the camps or in the hiding. One of the most visible and the large group of perpetrators includes members of Ukraine Auxiliary Police, Schutzmannschaft, because of their extensive role in the genocidal policies implemented by Nazi. My presentation seeks to analyze motivation, patterns, topography, dynamic, and functions of sexual violence against Jewish women and girls during the Holocaust in Ukraine. The main objects of the analysis are different situations and places of mass violence against Jews, which made women's bodies particularly vulnerable to sexual abuse by local police. The sexual violence perpetrated by locals seem to fall into several patterns. In the first pattern, the sexual violence is committed at the beginning of German-Soviet war in the summer 1941 during anti-Jewish pogroms. Many testimonies attest to the horrific acts of cruelty enacted on women's bodies, including forced nakedness and parade before crowds, attack on genitals and reproductive organs, and rapes. Thus, sexual terror was made more painful by the presence of male relatives and friends who were forced to stand by helplessly. In July and August 1941, individuals of small groups of policemen, I mean members of Ukrainian People's Militia and Siege, and local civilians break into Jewish houses, terrorize the inhabitants, steal their property, and rape the women and girls. The women might be raped by one or many. In either case, there is often a gang atmosphere. In many cases, rapes were perpetrated in front of the relatives and neighbors. Some victims were shot dead after rape. In some places, rapes took place before the arrival of the Germans and were perpetrated in the broader context of legal vacuum and shifting the power from the Soviets to Germans. Local perpetrators enjoyed impunity. A typical example in this respect is the situation in Jewish settlement Olizarka. Here you see Olizarka, located in 5 kilometers near Rafalivka in Rivnenska Oblast. Until the Germans came to Olizarka in late July 1941, locals committed several attacks on Jewish houses. A unique testimony about that is left by a local inhabitant, Baril Berko. He recalled that during the very first attack, policemen not only robbed Jewish homes, but also raped 3 girls, including 16 years old Rabbi's daughter Emma, a schoolgirl Henya, and 16 years old Perla, who died from bleeding that evening. The attack was repeated 2 days later. 7 Jewish girls, including Beryl's daughter, were raped by 3 policemen in his own house. One of them, Fanya, also died immediately after that. Beryl recalled, when the Germans came, it became much safer. They also executed one of the rapists, policeman Dmytro Danysyuk, a Ukrainian inhabitant of Olizarka. This case proved that sexual violence was an intimate violence, because unlike the newly arrived Germans, local perpetrators lived in the neighborhood of the Jews for many years. They knew their names, studied with them at the school, and had personal or economic relations with them. What else special about sexual violence in the summer 1941? What is sexual about sexual violence? First of all, I argue that sexual violence exhibited clear anti-Semitic motivation. This means that Jewish women and girls experienced rape primarily because they were Jews and secondary because they were women. Rape served to punish or revenge Jews who were regarded as sympathizers and bearers of Soviet power. Second, unlike peacetime rapes in the summer 1941 were not in individual acts performed in private sphere. Many acts of sexual violence were public. The observer's presence was required because sexual violation was first of all an aggressive act with aim to harm, subordinate, and terrorize not only women, but their men who failed to protect their women as well as entire community. So sexual violence is not a question of sex with a violent manifestation, but sexual violence was violence with sexual manifestation. Sexual violence during summer 1941 in Ukraine was committed as a part of widespread sexual attacks on Jews as ethnic community and could be considered as a crime against humanity. Rapes also occur while women were held in detention, in particular in prisons. It included forced nakedness, gynecological examination, sexual torture, rape, forced prostitution, and sexual slavery. Sexual violence in prisons had various purposes. Sex satisfaction, finding out information about hidden family, relatives, and property, or getting an admission in affiliation with the Jewish community. Sexual violence was a widespread phenomenon in the Genichesk prison. From available sources, we could reveal at least 4 names of Jewish rape victims. One of them, Rosa, was only 13 years old. The main perpetrators were the chief of the police, Andriy Falkenstern, and his deputies, including Alexander Nastashenko. Those police commanders were known to rape women in the subordinates' presence. Also, they often involved their subordinates in the rapes. They essentially controlled repertoires, targeting, and frequency of sexual violence in their police units. They made sexual violence a legitimate practice. In the eyes of the policemen rapists, rape was unacceptable, even a routine exercise of male superiority and aggression. Numerous accounts depict sexual violence as a routine part of everyday life in ghettos and camps. It had different forms and performed different functions. Forced prostitution, by which I mean negotiated sex for survival, was a very common type of sexual violence. Some policemen used this power to force Jewish women to have sex in exchange for food, medicines, clothes, better housing, employment, permission to go beyond the fence or wall to the ghetto, etc. Sexual assaults in forms of mass rapes in the ghettos and camps mostly occurred in the evening or at night, when groups of often drunk policemen broke into barracks or buildings where Jews lived. Young pretty girls were taken by guards and raped until they were half dead. Some of girls were raped and murdered immediately afterwards. This had been the case in the Bogdanovka extermination camps in the Buk River in Odessa Oblast. According to testimonies of Clara, Jewish survivor of Yarun ghetto in Zhytomyrska Oblast, among rape victims were little girls and elderly women. Clara herself experienced several rapes by different policemen when she was 13 years old. Sexual violence was also present in the killing sites in the forms of forced nakedness, beating on genitals, brutal jokes on women's sexuality, and rapes. On this slide, you see Jewish rape survivor Clara, and here her abuser, Grigory Andrusiv, coached by KGB only in 1966. At that time, he was already a Romanian citizen and pensioner and widower. But during his interrogation, he confessed that he took part in selecting 16 Jewish girls in order to perform sexual entertainment for German soldiers. At that night, Clara also was among these 16 girls, and she was raped by Andrusiv. Many Jewish women and girls were raped in hiding. Ukrainian policemen were charged with the patrolling the villages without German supervision, and they empowered to kill persons whom German leaders defined as enemies of the state, including Jews. This right to murder has become a de facto and unofficial right to rape, which could be and would be concealed by murder. In August 1941, Ukrainian woman Natalia was working in the field near a local railway in Rivnenska Oblast near Rafalivka. She saw her acquaintances, policeman Arsentiy Panasyuk and their 18 years old Jewish girl, Hanka. Natalia could hear Hanka asking, "Let me go to the woods, Senka. I'll give you a gold watch." In spite of the begging, Panasyuk raped Hanka and take this watch. Her murder had to conceal both rape and robbery. Most probably, this case of rape is a testimony to opportunistic rape, carried out for private, individual reasons. In example, to get sexual pleasure or demonstrating of power, and may not involve political or ideological motivation. The other example of opportunistic rape, but also an intimate violence, is case of Raisa. In December 1941, when she was 13 years old, she was raped by her fellow villager and school friend, 18 years old Yakov Grabovsky. At that time, he was a policeman in her native village, Novopavlivka, Odessa Oblast, and guarded the group of Jews which Raisa and her parents belonged to. Her parents knew Grabovsky and asked him to help them to escape. He agreed, and at first he let Raisa's parents to go, and then he promised to accompany her to the house where her parents were already hiding. He raped Raisa in his way. To conclude, I want to stress that sexual violence perpetrated by local actors raises a series of important questions. First of all, how gender of perpetrators, their age, ethnicity, sexuality, social class, political views, combated status, position of power intersect. How sexually violent behavior of men was rooted in cultural ideas of sex and gender. Is the motive of gaining sexual pleasure, the demonstration of power, the taking revenge, the submission, or the destruction of Jewish community? What the effects of sexual violence on the rapists? In my further research, I will try to address and answer these questions. Thank you very much for your attention.